The English language is strange. When it's raining cats and dogs, we're not literally talking about freak meteorological events. Unusual sayings like this one are everywhere, and many of them have truly bizarre origins. Did you know that going berzerk may have come from Viking war rituals, and out of the frying pan into the fire could be about burning someone at the stake? If you want to know the unusual stories behind our common expressions, well, you're in the right place. In this video, let's look at some more curious origins of popular sayings. Going cold turkey. Why is quitting something suddenly called going cold turkey? What do these birds have to do with kicking an addictive habit? This saying comes from Victorian London. It can be found in a satirical magazine, which includes a fictional story about a man who wrote a relative out of his will after she served him a cold turkey for Christmas. Soon the phrase emerged, giving someone the cold turkey treatment. It was related to the idea of cutting someone off entirely. But curiously, today it's used in the context of addictive substances, like alcohol or drugs, although no one is quite sure how it made this jump. Give a man a fish and you've fed him once. Teach a man to fish and you've fed him for a lifetime. This proverb is about the value of learning a new skill and how it encourages self-reliance. There's a common misconception to this one, that it came from ancient China. Although many proverbs are indeed attributed to Chinese philosophers, this one is not one of them. Instead, it is neither ancient nor was written by a man. It first appears in an 1819 novel by British author Anne Isabella Ritchie. In her book, Mrs. Diamond, one of the characters says, quote, "If you give a man a fish, he is hungry again in an hour. If you teach a man to catch fish, you do him a good turn." The myth that this saying is from ancient China seems to have sprung up in the 1960s. The first to have made this claim was an American magazine, The Rotarian, and it popularised the idea that this came from the Far East. Since then, the assumption has stuck. It's raining cats and dogs. This expression is used to describe heavy rainfall, like really heavy rainfall. As with a lot of phrases, this one came from jolly old England, a nation known for its miserable weather. Believe it or not, animals raining from the sky is a documented meteorological phenomenon, but not with cats and dogs, but fish. In the Central American Republic of Honduras, there's a local festival known as Luva de Peces, literally translating to fish rain. In the wet months of May and June, fish actually fall from the sky, to which the locals welcome with a carnival. Scientists have documented this bizarre natural phenomenon and have discovered that it's a result of water spouts, small tornadoes that develop over water. They're able to pick up water and scoop any unfortunate marine life in their path, and then rain them both down onto nearby land. Okay, we've established that raining fish is actually a thing, but what about cats and dogs? There are no reported cases of this actually happening. No tornadoes sweeping through pet stores, at least as far as I'm aware. Turns out the whole raining cats and dogs thing has a completely separate and unrelated story behind it. Some folklorists say it came from Norse mythology, where Odin's dogs, Geri and Freki, were able to summon the wind. At the same time, it was understood that cats could magically influence the weather, especially rain. So raining cats and dogs could mean that it's both windy and rainy. Personally, I'm not so sure about this one. It's raining rain and wind? Perhaps not. Also, the descendants of Norse languages today have their own uniquely strange idioms for bad weather. In Swedish, it's raining little devils. In Norwegian, it's raining she-trolls. And my favourite, Danish, it's raining shoemakers' apprentices. Thank you, Scandinavia. You never fail to amaze. Okay, let's get back on track. Another leading theory is that it's actually based on a Greek expression. In Greek, to say something is beyond belief, it's katadoxa. So, if it's raining outside like you won't believe, it's raining katadoxa. Some linguists believe that the English speakers misunderstood this Greek word, and katadoxa mutated somehow into cats and dogs. As it stands, no one quite knows the origin of this saying, so let's take a rain check on this one for now. With great power comes great responsibility. If the origin of this one seems familiar to you, then you may be a fan of Spider-Man. These are the famous last words that Uncle Ben uttered to Peter Parker, although when it first appeared in 1962, it was spoken by the narrator. This saying has become so tied with the Marvel superhero that it's been nicknamed the Parker Principle. However, this memorable saying about the accountability of power was actually not devised by Spider-Man's creators, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Instead, it has a far longer history. They may have got it from US President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who in 1945 said, quote, "In a democratic world, as in a democratic nation, power must be linked with responsibility." 2 years prior, in 1943, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill uttered a very similar phrase, quote, "The price of greatness is responsibility." But he in turn may have borrowed it from a French Revolution address, where in 1793 it was declared that where there is power, there must also be responsibility. This memorable phrase is intertwined with the rise of democracy in the Western world, so how Spider-Man's Uncle Ben got all the credit is quite the mystery. Go berserk. To go berserk is to get angry. This word came to English from the Vikings and was originally reserved for the most ferocious warrior of all, the berserker. The sagas tell us that before a battle, these warriors would enter a frenzied trance. They'd foam at the mouth, yell furiously, and be unable to tell friend from foe. Other legends tell us that these berserkers were even capable of reaching superhuman strength, believed to be immune to both fire and steel. Viking historians have suggested that these warriors were able to enter such a state through a type of ritual that induced a manic hysteria. Others say that they may have consumed psychedelic substances, like certain mushrooms or seeds. Alternatively, others have simply said that they just drank so much beer and they were off their faces the entire time. Interestingly, where go berserk came from Scandinavia, the related phrase running amok may have come from the Far East. Amok is Indonesian in origin. It's a word used to describe a sudden outburst of violence. In many folk religions, it was said that the demon tiger Hantu Belian had possessed the person and caused them to go mad, forgetting who they were and what they were doing. British explorer Captain James Cook once documented an instance of amok. He described how a man once went about, quote, "killing and maiming villagers and animals in a frenzied attack." The word amok then entered the English language and was used to describe chaotic individuals. Avoid like the plague. The meaning of this phrase is pretty simple. It's all to do with staying away from something or someone at all costs. For most of human history, there's one disease that everybody wanted to avoid, the bubonic plague. For victims, painful sores known as buboes would erupt on the body. If the disease entered the bloodstream, then death would swiftly follow. The first person to write this phrase down was possibly St. Jerome. After translating the Bible into Latin, he offered this advice, quote, "Avoid, as you would the plague, a clergyman who is also a man of business." Fortunately for St. Jerome, he never actually had to live through a plague epidemic. It would be roughly 120 years after his death when the Roman Empire under Justinian suffered a horrific outbreak of bubonic plague. Spreading across the Mediterranean and possibly as far as China, this plague is believed to have killed anywhere between 15 to 100 million people. But this was dwarfed by another outbreak some 800 years later, the Black Death. Between 1346 to 1353, the same disease, believed to have come from Central Asia this time, killed roughly 75 to 200 million people worldwide, claiming the lives of a third of medieval Europe's population. You can see why this phrase, "avoid like the plague," caught on and spread. It first appeared in English in 1647, shortly before another devastating bubonic plague was to break out in the city of London. Nowadays, whilst global pandemics are certainly not behind us, it's perhaps reassuring to know that bubonic plague is now treatable with antibiotics. Out of the frying pan, into the fire. From one dark saying to another, this phrase is used when something goes from bad to worse. It's believed to have come from Reformation England and may be to do with burning people at the stake. It first appeared in a heated religious debate between Catholic theologian Thomas More and Protestant reformer William Tyndale. Thomas More argues that his rival has damned himself to hell with his controversial statements. He writes that his opponent has, quote, "by his false reproach of trickery conveyed himself out of the frying pan into the fire." In other words, Such blasphemy will not only land you on a burning stake, but also land you in the fires of hell. But why frying pans? Well, there was a contemporary Christian belief that one of the many ways that demons tortured people in hell was by cooking them in a giant frying pan. Now, I know it sounds a bit strange, but it was a genuine fear held at the time. If you've ever read Dante's Inferno, you'll know that there are a lot more strange punishments out there. So, out of the frying pan and into the fire. Only issue with this one is that it really should be the other way round. From the fire, the stake, into the frying pan, hell. Either way, in the end, William Tyndale really did end up being burnt at the stake. But this was only after Henry VIII beheaded Thomas More. To mix my expressions, I guess you could say that he got a taste of his own medicine. Well, there you have it. Another collection of stories behind some of our most popular sayings. We've covered a lot of ground, from Berserk Vikings to bubonic plagues. If there are any sayings that you'd like to see covered, let me know down in the comments below. In the meantime, consider checking out my previous video on this very topic. But for now, I think we'll leave it there, although there are still plenty more sayings out there, just waiting to be explored. Hey, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this one. There were so many interesting sayings left from the last video that I just had to make a follow-up. Even still, there's plenty more left in the tank. If you'd like to see more, why not subscribe? A like and a comment also go a really long way. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.